Greetings, folks. So, last month, I had the pleasure of guest starring on Scare Theater, in which there was a discussion about the lost episode-related creepypasta Suicide Mouse. The thoughts on it were pretty casual, and I was going to do a rebuttal, but honestly, I agree with him. It's not that scary, it's not as good as Candle Cove, and it's kind of just basic. So why do I love it so much? Honestly, it's the story behind it I love. You see, in the late 90s, during the DVD phase, Disney, along with film critic Leonard Maltin, decided to release special editions of all their original cartoon shorts on DVDs. Now, these were not marketed towards children, but collectors, so it was insisted that everything beyond these. They're actually a very good buy, I own a few. Anyway, Suicide Mouse is sort of about this. So right off the bat, if you're not familiar with this, you might be a little lost. So okay, here's the story. Mr. Maltin, yes, this story is about a real-life person, finds this lost Mickey Mouse cartoon that is apparently 9 minutes long and is just Mickey re-looped in the background over and over again. Upon digitally remastering this thing, it turned out that there was some pretty scary images in it. There was some pretty disturbing things in the soundtrack, like a woman screaming. The images started getting all distorted, and apparently it was so disturbing it made his assistant commit suicide. That's basically it. It's just that. Now, as many of you know, I am a lover of cartoons, but I am also a collector. And seriously, I have a lot. But what really got me started on this was the so-called banned cartoons from the Golden Age. You see, in the 30s and 40s, many cartoons contained scenes that nowadays would be considered very inappropriate. Characters shooting themselves, characters turning blackface, anti-Japanese and German propaganda. Anyway, fast forward to the VHS decade, and many of those cartoons ended up in public domain, so distributors ended up putting them on tapes and marketing them towards children, completely unaware of what was on them. When parents discovered this, the tapes were pulled, and television releases of these were all altered. Now, I made it my mission to track down as many of these as I could find, and you couldn't get these things at a Blockbuster or a Suncoast. No, you had to get them at a flea market or some seedy dollar video store. Now, as bad as these things were, they were pretty commonplace for the 30s and 40s. But digging a little deeper in research, and I discovered other things. Ones that weren't supposed to be seen. Ones that weren't supposed to be ended up on tapes. That is where true cartoon myths and rumors began. These are the true lost episodes. I call these things the supposeds. You see, supposedly, there was a pornographic Mickey and Minnie cartoon. But according to rumor, Walt had every copy of these burned. So finding this would be like finding London After Midnight. However, supposedly, a blooper of Porky Pig swearing turned out to be true. I ended up finding it on an uncensored and unofficial blooper reel tape. Now, these cartoons were so much fun to find. It was the mystery behind them I loved. It was the discovery. Finding out which one was true and which one was false made me feel like Indiana Jones. Nowadays, though, unfortunately, all this stuff could be found on YouTube, so the shock value is gone. It's like they said in Jurassic World. Kids nowadays seeing a stegosaurus is just like seeing an elephant in the zoo. But that's where Suicide Mouse comes in. A cartoon nowadays that upon modern technology, digitally remastering it, extending it, sharpening it, you find out there's some disturbing things behind it, or rather, in it. It kind of makes me wonder, all those tapes in my basement, all those lost gems, what's on them? Or rather, what's behind them? Kind of makes me go from feeling like Indiana Jones to feeling like Elliot Spencer from Hellraiser. Maybe I shouldn't have opened that box. It chills me to the bone to think that one of my very own tapes can cause effects beyond one's comprehension. That is why I love Suicide Mouse so much. But truth be told, not everybody shares my enthusiasm in lost cartoons and myths. Now take Candle Cove, for example. That's a great story. You don't need to be into 1970s children's productions or local shows or have watched every episode of H&R Puffin stuff. You just need to enjoy a good, scary story. And we've all been involved in situations where it was discovered that something we saw as a kid was a little bit more disturbing than we remembered. Now, we might all be familiar with Mickey Mouse, but not all of us are really aware of the effects animation has on us, or the effects in a creator's world. That's why it's a personal thing for me. But the average person would sort of dismiss it as just being fake, and Truth be told, I totally understand where they're coming from. It is sort of basic, it is sort of simple, and it is quite obviously fake.
Waddle, you might want to look at this first.